viewers. Warm welcome to Mehndiratta sir and Rohit. Welcome. It's an honor to have both of you on this COA social dialogue platform. And we've been really looking forward to hearing words of wisdom, advice, and interaction with Mehndiratta sir. Well, thank you so much for accepting our invite. And Rohit, thank you for coordinating this. And I welcome you all officially to this COA social dialogue. We always believe that dialogue is a very important part of architectural and architectural conversations. And we are really honored and happy to have Mr. Mahendra with us, who needs no introduction at all. And he's the one who has interacted and worked with innumerable number of architects, iconic architects across the country, across the world. And we're honored to have you, sir, here. And welcome once again, a formal welcome and greetings from the Council of Architecture. And Rohit is a practicing architect in Delhi. And I think that should suffice. Rohit, you would probably introduce yourself and tell us all about you and your illustrious father. Welcome, COA Social. And as you all can see that there's a power failure in Delhi, and you'll have to bear with the lighting quality and the bandwidth connection for a little while. So we shall begin now. Rohit, over to you.
Thank you, Habib. Thank you, Durganand. Thank you, Sandeep and Jayashree. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I thought it was a lovely idea that you and Durganand had, and happy to take it forward. I also have to give credit to Jagdeep Jagpal from India idea of the father-son conversation. So we had one there in the last year of the art fair, and now we are here. And so without any, and apologies for the electricity, it's gone, and we can't.
Like they say, it's always power games in Delhi.
We are all in the dark, and but let's hope the light comes back fast. But I'll start the conversation. And so my first question to my father is, I want to hear a little bit more about how it was for him to grow up, his growing up time. What were some of the memories that stand out for him as he grew up?
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for this program. I think it's a very interesting program, conversation between father and son. Now, my first message, before I start answering your question, Rohit, my first sort of message to you is don't ask too many too difficult questions. I may not be able to satisfy the audience completely. Now you've asked, the first question is about
your childhood memories.
Childhood, well, my father was working for PWD. He was a and then later on retired as an executive engineer. He had a job, traveling job. So my memories are that we everywhere he was posted. We had big houses. He was posted for some time in Gurgaon. He was posted in Hisar. Then he retired from Hisar. Then near Lalpur, now in Pakistan. That is where we come from. So then I lived there for some time. And in 1930 came to Delhi, not to Delhi, sorry, to Lahore. So first 9th and 10th. And then right from that point onwards, for 10 years, I stayed in Lahore because I did my schooling, then my college from Government College Lahore, then engineering also from there. And I was posted also. I got a, I, because my father was very eager that I joined the same department that he had joined earlier. So I joined PWD, Buildings and Roads Department, as an assistant engineer, and I was posted.
No. I don't want you to go so far. We are still in your childhood right now.
My childhood is finished now.
No, it's not. So you were the seventh. You were the seven of 8 children. You had 5 brothers. You were 5 brothers and 3 sisters.
Yes.
And they were all very strong personalities. And what are your strong?
Five brothers and 3 sisters, and the eldest was the sister, and then was a brother, I think, and then it sort of varied. All, I think, as I had told you, my father was working, he was a very strict and honest man, and he could hardly educate one of his child completely. He was very eager that all his children should become engineers. So he educated the eldest son, and
Light has come.
Should I continue?
Yeah, continue.
So he educated his eldest son and then made it the responsibility of each of his sons to educate the next one. So my eldest brother, Yogaraj, oldest brother, he sort of supported the next brother, Rishiraj, who also became an engineer from Roorkee, civil engineer. And Rishiraj supported Kishan Raj, who also became an engineer from Roorkee. And then Kishan Raj supported me, and I supported my younger brother from behind, from top. I am the 7th, and one younger brother next to me, so I supported him. So, when it was, I think we were all very comfortable with each other, and my eldest brother supported and most of the family because he had a big business in second-hand cars in Lahore, and he had an open house. All brothers, at one time, everybody who was studying was in Lahore with him. So he was a very, very supportive gentleman and very well, very warm-hearted. And we had some friends also living with us, and I think it was a good time. So I had a very good relations with my brothers and sisters. At the end, I think my eldest sister, she never got married, and because I think for different reasons. And my father and my sister, they stayed with me in Delhi when I returned back from States.
You always mentioned about how your father wanted you to all become an engineer. So did you actually ever really want to be an engineer? Because I thought you also had this passion for maths.
Yeah.
And so was engineering something that you were pushed into, or did it finally become your first choice at some point in your life?
No, it is like this. I love maths. And I was good at maths. And we and if my it is true, if my father did not have this very strong desire that all his children become engineers, I might have pursued mathematics, but his desire was very strong, and those were the times when it was important to find employment. And the employment, you see, in other subjects, you have to be very, very, I mean, absolutely at the tops to get anywhere. And but in engineering, as soon as you graduated, you got a job was assured. So I did not, I could not, I did not resist my father's desire. That maybe I should have gone to mathematics, but well, it was too late. So here I am in India, and with, when I was studying, I had a passion for mathematics.
And this is a time, can you tell us a little bit, because I think a lot of people don't know here, or should be made aware that this is pre-independence time when you were school. You were born in 1924 and you finished your engineering by 1946, right?
That's right.
And so before independence, you'd already become an engineer. Can you tell us how schooling was at that time, what your experiences were? What are your dominant memories of school life, of the way you were taught, both in high school, in junior school, to college and engineering? How were the teachers? And also then, if you can continue into your friendships that you made that time with Prakash uncle and just Jagdish uncle, who are best friends. All of you are 96 now, or turning 96, and you're still best friends, and they all have also accomplished a huge amount in their fields. So can you talk about that life and about them?
Well, about that life. You see, when I studied first, when my father retired and he shifted to Jhangmagyana, there was a school in Jhangmagyana, which was a midway school between Jhang and Magyana. These are twin cities. So it was an ordinary school. There was nothing very high about it. I mean, it was not a very high profile school, but it was an ordinary school where I studied. But then when I came to Lahore to do in the 9th class, then I joined the government school, which was very, very good. It's a very, very good teaching and all that. And so 9th and 10th I did in Central Model School in Lahore. And it was very, I mean, my remembrances that they were very good teachers, and a whole lot of my class fellows of that also have done very well in life. And then later on, I joined the government college, where I had formed friendship with these two others whom you were talking about, Jagdish Lunsar and Prakash Bamba. You see, it just so happened in government college, the roll numbers are given on the basis of the marks that you got in the 10th class. So Jagdish Luthar had roll number 4 and Prakash Bamba had roll number 5, but I had roll number 69 because I had come from, I think they had secured much higher marks than I had secured in the 10th class. So, but it was interesting that the mathematics teacher in the government college very soon realized that the three of us are sharpest in mathematics. And whenever he had to call somebody to the blackboard to solve a sum or anything, he would always say, he will announce as this 4, 5, 69, one of you come here and solve. So that it was 4, 5, 69 again and again. And so we became very close as friends also. And we are very fortunate that this friendship we started in 1939 has continued for this much period. And both of us, Jagdish Luther, he joined the revenue services and he rose up to the deputy governor of Reserve Bank. And Prakash Baba retired, is a brilliant mathematician. And he retired as the vice chancellor of Punjab University. So they
how did these friendships drive you and sustain you? Did they nourish all of you? Like, did each one of you, because all three of you are very how do I say? There's a persistence in all of you, and there's this, you challenge life head on, all three of you. So is it something you learned from each other, or is it seeing each other you got the inspiration, or is it something that you all had and you just fostered in each other?
I think it becomes difficult to sort of analyze whether we each had a drive within ourselves, or we definitely the relationship did contribute to the way we grew up, because we became quite very close in the government college, and so I would say that the relationship did sort of push us. I mean, because each one had a desire to do well in life, and I think the best thing was we since in the college when you're near the top, etc., you have this desire to do the best that you can do, for whatever comes in your way. And so far as I am concerned, that is the motto which has driven me all through the life to do the best that I can give to the project, to the job which is in front of me. And so did the two of them also. And it just happened that we all are still alive, 95, 96, and we are still very fond of each other and stay in touch with each other. Actually, I talk to my friend Prakash Baba every evening. He lives in Chandigarh, and Jagdish Luther now lives with his daughters in America. So we had a very, very good relationship with each other.
So during this time also, by the time you became an engineer till 46, you had also witnessed Gandhi coming into the space of independence. You saw the different freedom movements. You also witnessed, whether vicariously, to the World War II, which totally changed the world. So how did it impact you as a person?
See, as a student, growing up student, I was politically not very active. So I knew that the war was going on, and when in Lahore, Gandhi came, so we went early morning at 4 o'clock, 4:30 to attend his prayer meeting. But I was not politically very strong in one way or another. So far as my life is concerned, it did not, so far as the wars are concerned, influenced my life to such an extent because we had all these problems of shortages and but that was a way of life at that time. So one had to live with them. So one lived with them. So, but I, I have strong memories of Gandhiji, and I have memories of during the war. I think the one followed the news, as to, because the war didn't touch India, but the news of the blackouts and the Hitler sort of rising and his fall, his rise and fall and all that, and followed that. But some students, some of them were politically quite active, I think, and some of them later in life went to the jail also and joined sort of these movements, because all these movements were, independent movements were all there. But I somehow was not politically very active.
But so can you talk about your first positioning, your first posting in the Punjab Works Department? Like how, having gone through your whole education, your first posting, and then also this was a time of the partition. So you had to choose between Pakistan and India, then you chose Simla. And so how was that whole experience for you?
Yeah, see, I graduated in 1946 and stayed soon after, got a job as an assistant engineer in Punjab PWD Public Works Department, and was posted. I got my training in Lailpur, a place near Lahore, for 3 months, and then was posted in Lahore. Louder. So I was posted in Lahore. So I specialized. I was given training in soil stabilization at that time, because soil stabilization had become it was a new field which had been developed by one of the engineers in our department who had gone abroad and studied, and he had introduced this, and then there were labs of soils where training was given to young officers on stabilized soil, because as I said, there was shortage of material, and so stabilized soil played a very important role in that period of time. It was being nourished very much. So I got my training there then, but while I was taking training, this partition took place. And when partition took place, so obviously every officer had this option that whether you want to stay in Pakistan or you want to go to India. So most of us Hindus, we opted for India. So I also opted for India. And my first posting was in Shimla. And Shimla, I was quite surprised when I was posted in Shimla. I just said I was SDO number 1. And SDO number 1 meant that I had this mule track from Shimla to Tibet. I was in charge of that mule track. And that was my first assignment, that a Pagdandi and the mule track, which was all the time there were, the work, major work was retaining walls, and clearance of when earth falls, what do you call it? Landslides and all that. And then when I was in charge, there was this relay system because we used to get messages from 150 kilometers away, say that rainfall occurred and there was landslide and it had to be cleared, and I have already cleared it, the junior officer would say. And that message would come to me by runners in 6 or 7 days. And so it was a very interesting job because you had no control over what was happening, except to accept. It's because if you wanted to control, it was impossible because so the juniors, the junior officers there, they were more or less taking care of this track and would send after that retaining wall has to be built, has been built, or is being built, or the landslide had to be cleared, has to be cleared. And I went quite far off on foot. Of course, one had to go on foot. So, as luck would have it, that there were rains at that time, quite heavy rains. And so the payments to people, to laborers and others could not be made, promptly. So I had to and get a bodyguard and carried a whole lot of money, cash, and walked, to Rampur. And it was a very interesting assignment. And later on in life, with my family, with my wife and children, we did this. By that time, the road had been built. So it was very interesting to revisit the places where I had trekked. And that was a different.
When was this? Which
46, 47.
No, when we all went.
Oh, yeah, you remember we went to Kampala. That's what is Rampur, Vishal, and
this was
Shimla, beyond Shimla.
Narkanda. Kaza.
Yeah.
That was a trip.
Yeah, that is
that is the road. Oh,
that is the road.
Okay. Okay. That's nice. And what about Chandigarh? Can you come to Chandigarh and your experiences with Corbusier and how he introduced you to engineering, structural engineering actually?
Now, Corbusier didn't introduce.
In the sense that his buildings introduced you to structural engineering.
Yeah, that is also, you see, I happened to be the first engineer who was posted in Chandigarh, posted as a resident engineer. Because in 46, I went to Shimla. Then I was SDO number 1, as I told you, in charge of the mule track. But that I remained for 1 year. Then I think my officers saw some potential in me, must have seen some potential in me. So I was transferred to the second subdivision, SDO number 2, which meant that at that time I had Shimla to Kalka road under me, Chilka to Kalka and other smaller roads, Mushobra, etc., etc. And all the government buildings at Shimla. That was another interesting job, which I don't know, I was over 24 years or so, but I must have been looking smart to some of the officers to put me in charge of that. And and from there, that was the time when Chandigarh was sort of, when I was in Shimla, that was the time that this thought of having a capital for Punjab, West Punjab, was from East Punjab, was sort of being brooded over, and so there was, I mean, different options were there. Some of the existing cities to be expanded and so on, or some new sites to be taken. So all this activity which was taking place in Shimla, I was around there and close enough because I was in charge of the housing, all government houses, etc. So I could get all the information that what is happening. And then somehow it appears I must have attracted attention even during that tenure that I was selected to be the first engineer to be posted in Chandigarh. But at that time I was the land was still being acquired and all that. And I stayed in the guest house in Chandigarh guest house. I was a bachelor, and it was interesting life. But all of that I had to do was collect material. We started because the Chandigarh finally site had been selected, the architect had been selected when I was posted, and then collection of materials, coal, steel, because whatever could be, because it was all short supply, and it was allocated to various projects by the authorities. So whatever was allocated to Chandigarh project, Chandigarh, it came to, and I had to set up storage systems, etc., to look after them. But pretty soon I got very bored with this exercise. It was a stop, you know, at that time everybody who had to sort of come, and anything connected with Chandigarh would stay with me, and I had to look after him and all that. And, you know, we were thinking of constructing a cement plant, a captive cement plant, which the idea was later given us, but so much work was done on that. Then we were thinking of setting up kilns earlier, which also was not done. But anyway, so that was, I think, 49. And then I got quite bored with that job, requested for a transfer. And I went to here and there, 2-3 places. And finally, in 52, I came back. I was posted back to Chandigarh. So by that time, you know, I had a very checkered sort of career. On the one hand, I got attention from some of the very senior officers who mattered, but this attention sort of made some of the other senior officers not very happy with me, and so I suffered to some extent sometimes on account of the attention which I got from one group of officers, because another group didn't like it at all. But anyway, this is old stories, forgotten, I think. But
then when did Corbusier come into your life?
So then I was finally posted as a design engineer. When Chandigarh land was acquired, had been acquired during this period of time, 46 to, no, not 46, 49 to 51, 52, land had been acquired. and Karbuzia had been selected. Everybody knows the process, how he got selected. He was selected, and then he had started working on the High Court building. And that is when I think I was selected to work in the design office. It was located in Shimla to begin with. And there were two of us. My executive engineer was Gulzar Singh. He was 1 year senior to me in college. But he had this advantage on some scholarship. He had gone abroad and got his master's in structures. So as soon as he came back, he was made executive engineer and in charge of this project. And I was the assistant engineer. The two of us worked on this Chandigarh project, whatever came. The first project which came our way was this High Court, and we worked on it. And
little louder.
So, now, am I audible to everybody?
Yeah, someone is saying voice not clear. So
Oh, okay. So I worked from first from Shimla, then later on we were posted to the site. But sites, there were no houses, so tents. So we were allotted tents. So we lived in tents, and so the first project that I did as a structural engineer was the High Court building. I mean, it was a very interesting exercise at a very interesting time, because we even though my senior Gulzar Singh had done masters, but he had also no experience of buildings. But we had some literature. He had picked up all this Portland Cement Association literature, and we had American codes. You see, because Indian codes, etc., were not there at that time, 50s. So, on the basis of all the American literature which he had collected, we managed to design it. And then later on, Gulzar Singh wanted to go to construction, and I took over from him as an executive engineer. And first, it was the High Court which we designed together. Then, as an executive engineer, I designed the secretariat by myself, with assistants, number of engineers who worked under me. And then while working for High Court and Secretariat, I realized, you see, that the structural engineering is a very interesting field. And because I thoroughly enjoyed designing, investigating, doing some research work, because there was nobody else to guide, except for Gulzar Singh, and Gulzar Singh later on went to the field. So that's when I decided to go abroad and study more, do my master's in structures. But with Karbuzia, it was very interesting, because I think everybody knows Karbuzia, how egoist he was, and how if he drew something and you said that this can't be done, then he will try to first run you down. But here in Chandigarh, this also is well known, but I'll repeat it, that when Karbuzia had come, he had been appointed, he had put this condition that he would have senior people senior architects and engineers selected by him. So he had selected Maxwell Fry, Jane Drew, and his cousin, Jean. But he wanted to select one French engineer also. And their PWD officers, they said, no, engineering we know. So architecture at that time was not much known. So they said, it's fine, you have these 3 senior architects, but then they can set up a team of architects. But engineering, we are all engineers and we'll manage. So as a result, every time there is some problem, and if you wanted Corbusier to change, his first response would be I told you to have a French engineer. You know your Indian engineers cannot design the buildings I design. So in secretary, in High Court, if you see the parasol, you see the parasol was first convoys cantilevering out. And we frankly, we didn't.
This was the High Court. This was the High
Court. The roof was the convoys cantilevering out. And we didn't have the slightest clue how to design it. So we told our officers that I think we can create those convoys by hanging them from a roof above, which we can design. So I think Corbusier didn't very much like to begin with, but later on he accepted it. You see, and if you see Corbusier's drawings, and I have also shown that he had first the end elevation and this huge gutter which comes out at the lower level because of this convoys. And then when we asked for a sort of change the design, but we wanted a cantilever roof of a huge cantilever beam, and with slab, etc. at the top, and the gutter also raised, and then the convoy was all hung from that. So that is how we did it. So he was a little unhappy, but he accepted that with this. But later on, when I was doing the secretariat, at that time, I think so far in High Court, I did not have any personal touch with Corbusier. It was from, because the other officers were there above me. But then I had to deal with him because the officers would take me, and we had an interesting sort of incident when sector, if everybody knows Chandigarh High Secretariat Building, Sector 4, which is the governor's sector. You see the facade of that, he sent some sketches where the columns were jumping all around. And I looked at it and I told my officers that this is very difficult. If we have to do this, we need very strong horizontal bands, and it's too much of jumping around of columns. So I then had sketched some alternative with the same elevation, but behind a column that goes through. So it was the same story. The officers said, well, you have got this idea, you come with us and try to convince Corbusier. We are not going to go and tell him because he'll throw it back on us about the French engineer. So I was taken, that was my first visit with Corbusier. and tall man and unsmiling. And so when they explained and I tried to explain, he looked at my sketch and he threw it away. He said, no. Again, it was the same story. He said, I told you to have some senior French engineer. You haven't look at the problem. He can't design what I have done. So the meeting ended, and so I asked my officers what to do. They said, well, let's wait. 2-3 days later, Corbusier called and wanted another meeting. So I went with the officer. And this time he was smiles and all that. He worked out his facade to a considerable extent, taking the ideas which I had, but of course with his own touches. And he said, well, young man, will this do? I looked at it, I said, yes, sir, this will do. So he was very, so I think
Yes, lovely. That's
it was a very interesting episode. And I was recited a number of times.
So
all of you.
You started your career with the most famous and the biggest, what the world likes to think of as one of the best architects ever seen in modern history, and some of the most important buildings. And that's where you began your career. And then you went to the US. And what are your experiences of the US that you would want to share? One experience is for me is ABBA. You met ABBA there, your friend, and I also met him in New York, and we were very close. And so this whole idea of starting your journey, then you took a ship, and you went and met Corbusier also in France, and then you went on to America. So and then you worked in Aman and Whitney there. So how did America transform you in terms of an engineer? What did it give you that became your ideology that you have always stuck to after you came back and you started your own practice?
You see, because at that time, I didn't have much money and I didn't want to ask others to, so I was in Chandigarh and a plot had been allotted to me, one of the residential plots, a large plot. And then I decided to return it back to the authorities and collect the payment, whatever I had given. That was enough for me. And with whatever savings I had to go to America, and I went by ship from here. But I had planned my trip to get down from the ship in Marseille, then go and see Corbusier's buildings in Marseille, and then go on to Paris and meet him and see his buildings in Paris. And then
you met him in Paris also.
I met him in Paris.
How was that meeting?
Oh, that meeting was very interesting. He was very happy to see me, and it was very, very good. He was very cordial. But so by that time, perhaps Doshi was earlier working on the High Court and Secretariat buildings, but he had come back to India, and Talati was there. But he was very happy then. Then you're asking me how did America
shape you?
You see, firstly I did masters in Minnesota, and then I got all A's, and the professors there were very eager that I continue doing PhD. But since I had already spent time designing buildings, So I was eager to design more buildings. And then I had heard of this Ammon and Whitney in New York, which was the topmost firm in structural design at that time. They all this PWA terminal of Saarinen and this 3-point dome in Boston had all been designed by them. And that Whitney was the father of folded plates, and Ammon was of the bridges, And so after doing my master's, I didn't do a PhD in Minnesota. I went to New York and there joined Ammon and Whitney. And I was very fortunate that Ammon and Whitney, I got to do some very large span structures. And that gave me a lot of confidence. Because even you yourself run some numbers, and a hangar. I had first job was a hangar with 150 feet cantilevers on both sides and the central bay of about 40 feet. So in folded plates. So I thoroughly enjoyed designing that. But that gave me a lot of confidence also. I devised a whole lot of detailing ways in order to make that possible. But anyway, it was in Ammon and Whitney that night. There was a 400 feet diameter dome that I was asked to design on. And so there were large span structures, so which gave me a lot of confidence. So it was very, very important for my future career, which with hindsight, I know that I required all this strength, mental strength, mental engineering strength from Ammon and Whitney because that time I made friendship. You were talking about Abba Thor, who was a fellow engineer, and he had come from Israel, and we were more or less the same age, and we became very close friends. And I think we, so we worked together on this Illinois dome, which is also in folded plates, a dome in folded plate, which I did the upper part and he did the lower part. So it was great. It was great. And we became very, very close friends. And later on, when I came to America, to India, and started my own practice, and my children, like you also perhaps met him.
I was very close to him. I was for 5 years. I was meeting him every 2 weeks or something like that. And then Bandhani also became close. I used to go and have dinner with him every second week.
Shomi was first I introduced Shomi to him when Shomi went for his mathematics.
Ohio.
So how I would chide me, your son came, we had dinner together. I must say he's a very good eater.
Abba had quite a humor. Abba was very humorous and
he had a humor. But he had a humor, and I think this also, perhaps I've told the story before, but because Abba Thor is his name, is right. So he later on, when I had my practice in India, I was working on Louis Kahn's this IIM also. So it was So and then I went to America and I introduced him to Louis Kahn, introduced Abba to Louis Kahn, and Louis Kahn and him, they became very close friends, and Louis Kahn gave him a number of projects to do. But so Abba, you see, he used to write well, and then he wrote, he sort of gave one while working with Louis Kahn, he said, you know, the relationship between an architect and engineer, it's a very interesting relationship. And it says, you realize a ballet dance where the architect is the ballerina and the engineer is the ballet dancer. And they have not rehearsed the piece, so they're on the stage, and the ballerina would take a jump anywhere from any part of the stage in any direction, any height, and the engineer is always to be there to catch her when she comes back, not to let her fall down. So this was very interesting concept. I don't know, I have talked too much, I think.
No, Habib, how much time do we have?
As much as you want, guys. As much as you want. As long as sir is not tired and he can continue, we would love to hear.
He's on a roll.
let him continue, Michael. I mean, this is an honor for all of us.
Okay.
No, but so I mean, so far, is it interesting?
Yeah, everyone is saying great.
Absolutely mesmerizing. Absolutely mesmerizing. We all listening with full rapt attention.
So you came back after America, and it's nice to hear the word confidence, because you've never said this before, that Aman and Whitney gave you this sense of confidence and what we all keep calling your engineering intuition, which is unparalleled in India. It was, have you ever felt that this confidence was ever tested, that you were stretched to a point that the confidence almost would betray you?
Well, you know, Rohit, your father is a structural engineer, but and I think so many times it has come. I have voiced, the feelings of a structural engineer while doing projects, interesting projects and projects in which there is no precedence before. You see, how he feels, he has to do them, he has to take decisions, and it has to come up. Because you see, I mean, I was fortunate when I came back also, that I resigned from the PWD after I came back, because I had come back actually to design to supervise this agricultural fair, which US Pavilion in that, which Mehndira Saki had designed. So I was on the team with architects and I was the engineer. I was the engineer in India, and Avatar was the engineer in America. So after this building was built, and it was inaugurated and all that, then I had the option to go back to America and sort of resume my career there. But then I had been approached by PWD also here to come back and join them. But I had another offer from Atomic Energy Commission to join them, because the chief of Atomic Energy Commission at that time was a very senior engineer from Punjab, who knew me very well. And he tried to entice me to join Atomic Energy Commission. But I opted to start my own practice, and I started my practice. But I was very fortunate, that right in the beginning, I worked with Charles Correa, B.B. Doshi, Mr. Kanwende, and all of them, and later Raj Raval, and all Indeed Sabiki, Kuldeep Singh, and then so on. So it was a very interesting journey.
And all of these architects became your friends also, very close friends, many of them, Doshi, Correa, Kanwende. And can you tell us nuggets of your memories for each one of them? Like what, when you think of Correa, what do you think of? When you think of Doshi, what do you think of? And what was your favorite project for them, each one of them? Let's start with Correa.
Well, Correa, actually, Correa was to a considerable extent responsible that I took the decision at that time to stay back and start my practice, because that was the time when I had the following or alternative, either to go back to America and rejoin Emin & Whitney, go back to America and join Minoru Yamasaki. He had offered me a position in his office. Then rejoin PWD and work as superintending engineer there, wherever I was posted, or take a position in atomic energy, a senior position, and work in atomic energy. It was coming up with new buildings that are in Andheri, I think, what they have built. It just started construction. There were these Italian architects and engineers who had come, who had been invited to help them to build it. So, and then the other was this design. Start my practice either in Bombay or Delhi. So I was very confused and couldn't think through. And so one day, while I was working on this pavilion, this agricultural pavilion as a construction engineer, so this tall, handsome young man came to me and he says, "Are you Mahendra?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I am Charles Correa. I am an architect in Mumbai. So I have just come back from Chandigarh, and Chandigarh people tell me that you are a very good, sort of now good engineer, and you're thinking of going back to America." He said, "Why do you want to do that? There's so much of work in India, and don't go back to America. Stay back and come and start your office in Bombay. We'll try and work out some projects together." So he sort of, it was out of the blues. He came, he sought me out. He sort of gave this idea to go to Bombay and start the practice, that he would help me to procure jobs and so on and so forth. So eventually, to a certain extent, it did not only that, but then I found out that at that time there was not much happening in Delhi. And Bombay I went because Ahmedabad was very close, and Ahmedabad had become the new capital. I think that was the time when Maharashtra and Gujarat were one state. You see, and the states were split, and Ahmedabad became the capital city of Gujarat. And so much work had to be done there. So that is how I think, I don't know, Rohit has started me on from my childhood, and I have come to the mid-age.
So please continue. Please continue.
Old man.
So tell us for each architect. Okay, I'll short
No,
circuit
not for each architect.
Guria Doshi, Mehndiratta and Kuldeep Singh. I've named these
You
five.
see,
One building and one memory of collaboration.
Kuldeep Singh, Charles Korea, I have told you, and the memory.
The best build. I mean, the best collaboration you felt you had with him.
The Salvador.
The Salvador Church,
Salvador
the
Church,
Portuguese church,
and
Salvaco Church,
Salvaco Church,
I mean, in Bombay.
In Bombay, and the assembly in
Bhopal, which took over how many years? It took 13 years.
Some years. I mean, there were problems and all that. Problems of contractor and so on. So Charles Korea became a very, very close friend, and he did these. With Mr. Kanvinde, I done this Gandhi Memorial Hall, which I did when I was in Bombay, and so
yeah, I've just posted photographs of it on the Instagram account of that, so people can go there and see Gandhi
Memorial Hall was, and then I did lecture halls in Kanpur with Mr. Kanvinde.
And what was your favorite memory with Mr. Kanvinde? Your favorite conversation?
Mr. Kanvinde was fantastic. He was, I mean, so as a human being, I think he talks amongst all the architects. You see, as a human being, because he was so humble, and he had acquired such a high position, and he was just so thoughtful and so considerate. It was fantastic. I mean, one day I was still in Bombay and a bachelor. He had called me for dinner, and he used to live in Daryaganj somewhere in the first floor. And he called me and gave me the address, but then he was so worried that I may not find the location. So he was standing in the balcony of his house, waiting for me to come. And when I came, and he saw me getting out of the taxi and inquiring places, and he waved me, Raj. So then I went. It was very touching. So Kanvinde was fantastic. Kanvinde's memories of the projects. And Doshi became a very close friend. Doshi's Ahmedabad, the Central Bank, and the Tagore Memorial Hall. You see, each one has a story, I think, of its own. You know, if I start going that, I think it'll never end this conversation.
What is your favorite memory of Doshi in terms of your collaboration or any unique
Doshi, the favorite memory is Tagore Memorial Hall, because when he was assigned that job, and it was in front of Corbusier's museum. So Doshi said, "My God, I'm scared, to do a building in front of my master's building, and so we have to do a good job of it." And so we worked very hard, Doshi and I, to design to work out a design, and luckily, we managed to produce something which attracted notice and made its presence felt in front of Corbusier's building. But then the other building was, with Doshi, I did a number of projects. This Premamai Hall was there, and Central Bank, but I mean, I started working in the central bank when I was in Bombay, and then I moved to Delhi, and so in my office, anybody who worked in central bank, he left me eventually. So and Doshi wouldn't stop changing. And then I was not, I would keep on losing not only engineers but draftsmen also. So then finally I said, no more change, because whatever you want to do, you tell me, no, I will do it myself. And a draftsman whom I can trust, but that draftsman also left me. it was so funny.
And then Rajawal.
Rajawal is a very interesting, projects, because all this Hall of Nations and STC building and Rajawal. But the Hall of Nation was, I think it took, I think I must have been very, very foolhardy at that age, to have designed it the way I did design. You see, because if anybody is interested in the story of space frames, you see, every space frame which has been patented in Germany or England, they went through series of tests, load tests of the members and the joint, series of load tests, members and the joint, before they arrived at a system and then marketed it. And here I was to design this huge building, and get it built in 1.5 years, less than that, and design and build without any test or etc. So I had to sort of devise the joint, so that the forces manage to go through, because you get tension in one member, and then in the opposite you have compression or something like that. But very high tensions and compressions in the members, and we have to pass through that joint, and the joint has to contain it. So it was quite a job to design that joint, and the members also. So it was the most challenging. Then STC was also equally challenging, but Kuldeep Singh, the assembly building, not assembly, NDM, the NDMC building, and then
NDMC, Palika Kendra,
NCDC has interesting story that, Kuldeep had given an entry competition, and the jury, I think Mr. Bhalla was one of the members, as well as there were other members also. They said, well, this building, it's a very funny, like looking building, and it can't be built, So Kuldeep Singh said, but I have discussed this with Mehndiratta, and he thinks it can be, and he worked out some solutions. So the jury said, well, you bring him here. So I was taken by Kuldeep Singh, and along with Kuldeep, I explained how it's supposed to be. So
Rohit, I have a point. I have just a suggestion to make, a very gentle suggestion. It's been 1.5 hours in the conversation. I'm sure sir would be absolutely tired, and it will be unfair to continue. What do you say? Should we have another session tomorrow?
We can, sure.
Because I mean, there's so much to hear and so much to learn. Experiences with all the architects that he has worked his entire life, the anecdotes of the architects. I mean, the Fry Auto connection, and all these things. It's like a walking history, inflation blood, and the kinds of comments and the chats that we are receiving. So many engineer friends are with us, and so many architects are asking so many questions. I think it will be unfair on sir to tax him more. It's almost been 1.5 hours. I mean, whatever. I mean, if you guys are comfortable, we can continue. But I would suggest a second session would probably be more interesting and more.
Tomorrow? Another hour tomorrow?
Yeah,
I think we can do 1 hour tomorrow if you want, for sure.
I think so, because I mean, it will be unfair on sir to
because
tax him so much. I mean, it's a humble suggestion, but
yes, I think Rohit wants to know my life in each phase of my,
so we would also like to know. You're a walking encyclopedia of architectural and engineering history in our country.
Well,
I have a hour more of questions, so we should do it maybe tomorrow.
I think let's do it tomorrow. We'll inform everyone that please join us tomorrow, because taxing sir on these issues, and I mean, he's in a flow at the moment, and we don't want to stop. But I think session tomorrow would be probably a little more comforting.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to say something, Papa, before we go?
No. I just want to say to Habib that I'm sorry it took me a long time to recognize you, but I had such a pleasant stay with you.
Yes. It was an honor. It was an honor. Memories of lifetime that we cherish.
You had there was one Sardarji architect.
Yes, Mr. Ahuja. Yes.
So, we went out shopping with your wife.
Right, yes.
Yes, it was delightful. And after that, you came, both of you, once to our house.
Right. Those were in the office, and the kind of passion that you showed in showing all the drawings that you all did. It was like the kind of commitment that you showed. It was phenomenal. It's inspiring, and it's mesmerizing.
Thoroughly.
Thank you, sir. I think Rohit will connect tomorrow. Sir, please take rest, because it's been almost 1.5 hours now.